The gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank all the witnesses. I know that you can't necessarily see the entire gallery behind you, but I would point out that there's not one gray head in the entire packed gallery today. There must be a message in that for all of us on this panel and in this room and for America. A lot of youth has stepped up and are paying attention to where this goes. And I would say remember these days and look back about 20 years ago when Section 230 was passed with an anticipation of what the internet would grow into and with great care to making sure it had the kind of flexibility to grow into the companies that we have before us today. We shouldn't be surprised if we have a few problems and maybe some serious ones that have emerged. But on the other hand, we do have a lot of freedom. And so I'd turn first to Ms. Bickert, and I'd point out that it's a matter of congressional record that Gateway pundit, Mr. Jim Hoft, has introduced information into the record that in the span of time between 2016 and 2018, he saw his Facebook traffic cut by 54%. And could you render an explanation to that for him and for me, Ms. Bickert?
Thank you, Congressman. I can't speak to any one individual's decline in reach or popularity on Facebook. I can say that we do change the way that our newsfeed algorithm works. The algorithm basically, it's individualized and it gives people, it sorts or ranks content for each individual user based on people that they follow, pages that they follow, groups that they belong to. So it's an inventory of content that they have chosen. And we do make changes to that over time, and we have made some this year that might affect whether or not people have, it might affect their reach in some way, but there are also other factors, such as how appealing their content is, or what sorts of content they're producing and who they're trying to reach that would also affect it.
But I mean, we actually did speak to Diamond and Silk, but their issue, and they watched their traffic drop too, and I saw them repeat a tweet after you lifted apparently the algorithm that had cut down on their distribution of their content. But what you've described to me, I think there are a series of judgment calls that are being made. Can you be more precise on how an algorithm actually works? So let me just try this definition. A series of if-then formulas that are written so that, let's just say if a certain word shows up, then that sets up a software alarm bell that perhaps connected with another word or two or a phrase would cause it automatically to be kicked out. Is that a fair explanation of what goes on?
It works a little differently than that, Congressman. What the algorithm looks to is what is the type of content. It looks at things like what is the type of content that an individual user tends to interact with, what's the recency of a certain piece of content, what type of engagement is that content generating. There is no point at which an individual Facebook employee decides where an individual piece of content will go in somebody's newsfeed. This is based on giving users the content that is the most relevant to them based on their interactions with the site.
Okay, but there's still judgment calls involved, and you have people that are ethics experts that are applying a certain strategy to the algorithms. Is that a fair assessment?
We definitely do have, the algorithms are written by people, and we do definitely
with
look
the
at
counsel of your ethicists?
We definitely make sure that we are taking into account ethics and fairness as we work on our algorithms.
Have you used the Southern Poverty Law Center as one of those advisory groups?
No, Congressman. We do talk to more than 100 organizations in the course of setting our content policies, and that includes organizations from around the world. They do not have no organization has decision-making over our content policies.
But not SPLC has not been under contract or been a formal advisor to Facebook in any way?
No, Congressman, not that I'm aware.
Okay.
We have talked to SPLC along with more than 100 other organizations in the course of getting input from our community about what we can do better.
So, all right, I could go further with that, but instead I think I'll just, in the seconds I have left, I would ask you to contemplate, and I'll turn to Ms. Downs now. And by the way, I tweeted out the picture of the gallery, so you know that, Mr. Pickles. Ms. Downs, I think you have a sense and a concern about where this is going, and I'm all for freedom of speech and free enterprise and for competition and finding a way that we can have competition itself that does its own regulation so government doesn't have to. But if this gets further out of hand, it appears to me that Section 230 needs to be reviewed. And one of the discussions that I'm hearing is, what about converting the large behemoth organizations that we're talking about here into public utilities? How do you respond to that particular query, Ms. Downs?
The time of the gentleman has expired. The witness may answer the question.
Thank you, Chairman. As I said previously, we operate in a highly competitive environment. The tech industry is incredibly dynamic. We see new entrants all of the time. We see competitors across all of our products at Google, and we believe that the framework that governs our services is an appropriate way to continue to support innovation.
Thank you. Are you back?
The chair recognizes